All right, boys and girls, today we're doing multiplying and dividing of fractions and mixed numbers. All right, we're going to start with multiplying fractions, and I have two fractions here, so we're going to start with the first one, number 1. When it comes to multiplying fractions, honestly, it's very straightforward. I always tell students, you just basically multiply straight across, okay? And then I'll show you a couple of tricks to simplifying, but basically I just multiply across. So -5 times 1 will give me -5, and 4 times 3 will give me 12. Okay, so I could just multiply straight across, and then when I look at my answer at the very end, I just want to make sure that it's always simplified, okay? I know a lot of students always ask, do I need to simplify it? That's not even a question that you should ask. It should always be simplified, okay? Always. Fractions should always be simplified. So if we look at here, we have 5 and 12, and they don't have a common factor, so that's as far as you can go. So you just simplify, okay? So I tell my students, you can just multiply across and you can wait until the end, or number 2, you can actually check to see if you can reduce anything ahead of time. And the way that you check is you check diagonally. So you check like this. Okay, you check these numbers. Do they have a common factor? And the answer is no. But now you check this way. You have to check both ways diagonally, okay? So you're looking for the greatest common factor. And if you guys look at these numbers, they're both exactly the same. So their greatest common factor would be 4. So you would divide by 4 and you end up with 1. So what you've done is you reduce it ahead of time so that you don't have to simplify it at the end. And what's nice is that your numbers are really small now. So you end up with 7/9. And because you've reduced ahead of time, you don't have to reduce at the end. It should be already reduced, okay? So you can either wait and just multiply, wait until the end to check if you can simplify, or reduce ahead and then simplify, okay? But multiplying is always simple. All right, let's take a look at another one. Okay, in the next example, number 3, we have a whole number, -2 times 3/7. And so, or I should say an integer. And then you're thinking, how do I multiply a fraction with an integer? Well, you can always make every integer into a fraction by basically putting it over 1. Okay? And then again, just real quick, check to see if you can reduce anything diagonally this way and this way. And in this case, you can't, so you would just multiply straight across. So -2 times 3 will give you -6, and 1 times 7 will give you 7. And because you couldn't reduce ahead of time, you know this is already in simplified form. Okay? But always double check. All right, and then number 4, we have 2 mixed numbers. Always, whenever I have 2 mixed numbers, right away is I rewrite them as improper fractions, okay? I remember working with the student, and she called this the circle of fun. So if it helps, you can use that to remember. But you multiply your denominator with your whole number. So 2 times 5 would be 10. And then you add your numerator. That would be 11. And because it's negative, it would be -11/5. Okay? And then you do the same thing here. So 4 times 1 is 4, plus 3 is 7. 7/4, and because it's negative, it has to be negative. Okay? And then again, before I multiply, I always try to reduce ahead of time. So check this way and this way. And if I just can't, then when I write my final answer, it becomes -77. But I'm sorry, negative times a negative is a positive, so it should be +77 over 20. Okay. Now, my final answer is an improper fraction. But since they were both mixed numbers at the beginning, you might want to change it to a mixed number as well. So this is where I say 77 divided by 20. Or how many times can 20 go into 77 without going over? And that's 3 times. Okay, so 3 times 20 is 60, plus 17 is 77/20. And just check to make sure you can't simplify these any further. Okay, and then this would be my final answer. So multiplying fractions is super easy. Okay, all right, let's try one more. Okay, the next one that I'm going to do with you is, again, 2 mixed numbers. So the first thing I'm going to do is rewrite them into improper fractions. So 7 times 1 is 7, plus 5 is 12. So 12/7, and again, we keep the negative sign. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5, 5/2. and we keep the negative sign. Okay. All right. Now, before I multiply, check if you can reduce anything. So 7 and 5, they don't have a common factor. 2 and 12, the greatest common factor is 2. So we can divide 12 by 2 and we get 6. 2 by 2 and we get 1. Okay. Now multiply straight across. 6 times 5 is 30, and since they're both negative, a negative times a negative is a positive. So 30, and then 7 times 1 is 7. So 30 over 7. And now I want to write it as a mixed number. So 7 goes into 30 4 times without going over. Okay. 7 times 4 is 28, plus 2 is 30. So my final answer is 4 and 2 7s. Okay. All right, so now let me give you a couple so you can try on your own. All right, boys and girls, I gave you 5 problems, 5 fractions that I want you to do on a separate sheet of paper. And then as usual, pause the video and then come back and check for the solutions, okay? So number 1, you have 8 over 7 times 7 over 10. Number 7, you have negative 2/3 times 5/4. Number 8, negative 2 and 2/3 times 4 and 1/10. Number 9, negative 1 and 1/4 times 9. And number 10, negative 2 3/8 times 2 1/2. Okay, so do it on a separate sheet of paper, pause the video, and then come back for the solutions. All right, boys and girls, these are the solutions that you should have gotten. So hopefully you got this correct. Number 6, 4/5. Number 7, negative 5, 6. Number 8, negative 10 and 14/15. Number 9, negative 11 and 1/4. And number 10, negative 5 and 15/16. Okay. All right, so now we're going to move on to dividing of fractions. All right, the first examples that I'm going to give you of dividing fractions, let's start with number 11, negative 1/5 divided by 7/4. I actually like dividing because the truth of the matter is you don't really divide, you actually multiply. So what we always do is whenever you divide 2 fractions, what you're actually doing is you're going to change it into a multiplication. So the first fraction will stay the same, so negative 1 negative 1/5 times, so your division turns into a multiplication, and then you actually have to do the reciprocal of the second fraction. So it's always the reciprocal. So division problems turn into multiplication problems, but just remember your divisor always becomes the reciprocal. Okay, so negative 1/5 times 4 over 7. Now you just follow the same rules that you did for multiplying fractions. So in this case, I can just multiply straight across, because if you notice, there's something I can reduce by. So negative 1 times 4, negative 4, 5 times 7, 35. And if you notice, there's nothing I can simplify. If there's nothing you can simplify ahead of time, usually there's nothing you can simplify here. And so this is my final answer. Okay, let's try another. So negative 3/2, I would write that down. Remember, you go from division to multiplication, and then you do the reciprocal. So it's now 7 over negative 10. Okay, and then nothing you can simplify ahead of time except the divisions. Negative divided by a negative will be a positive. So if you notice, what they have in common is or their greatest common factor is negative 1. So if you divide by negative 1, and it's now positive. You divide by negative 1, just becomes positive. Okay, or you can wait until the end. So this would be 21 over 20. Okay, and again, I'm going to go one step further and write this as a mixed number. So my mixed number would be 1 and 1 over 20. 20 times 1 is 20, plus 1, 21 over 20. Okay, that's it. So division, honestly, you're just rewriting it as a multiplication. So let's do a couple more. All right, so for number 13, I have negative 9 over 5 divided by 2. So again, I would rewrite this as negative 9 over 5 times, and the reciprocal of 2 would be 1/2. Okay, and then check to see if you can simplify. And if there's nothing, just multiply straight across. So negative 9 over 10. And then that would be my final answer. Okay. Now here we have two mixed numbers. Again, right away, change them to improper. So this would be 7 times 1 is 7 plus 6, 13 over 7. And this is 5 times 4 is 20 plus 3 is 23 over 4. But since we're going to change, it's going to be 4 over 23. And don't forget it's a multiplication. And then check to see if you can reduce anything. And if you can't, just multiply straight across. So this would be 13 times 4, which is 52. And 7 times 23. And I'm going to use a calculator for that one. Okay, that's 161. Okay. And you guys, if you're wondering, can you simplify? Well, you can always check to see if you can. But remember, if you weren't able to reduce ahead of time, then most likely you can't reduce then. So this is your final answer. Okay. All right, guys, let's do one more and then I'll give you some to practice. All right, guys, the last one we're going to do together is number 15, and it's -2 divided by -3 4/5. So I like this one because it has a couple different steps. First of all, change the -2 into a fraction by putting it over 1. The division to a multiplication, and the mixed number to an improper. So 3 times 5 is 15 plus 4 is 19 over 5, but we're going to flip it. So 5 over 19. Okay? And don't forget it's negative. Check to see if you can reduce anything, and if you can't, multiply straight across. -2 times -5 is positive 10, and 1 times 19 is 19. And that should be my final answer. Okay. All right. That's the last one we're doing together. Now let me give you some problems that you can practice on your own. All right, boys and girls, I gave you 5 problems right here to try on your own. So 16 is -1/2 divided by 5/4. 17, 1/2 divided by 8/7. 18, -3 and 5/9 divided by 3. 19, 1/9 divided by -1 and 1/3. 20, -3 and 7/10 divided by 2 and 1/4. Again, pause the video, do these on a separate sheet of paper, and then come back for the solutions. All right, your solution should be as follows. Number 16, -2/5. 17, 7/16. 18, -1 and 5/27. And 19, -1 over 12. And 20, -1 and 29 over 45. All right, boys and girls, let me give you an assignment. And then again, just reach out if you need help.